Welcome to another video from explainingcomputers.com. These days, more and more people seem to be migrating to Linux, and therefore in this video I thought I'd provide an introduction to the Linux terminal, which I know some people can find daunting, but which can also be very powerful indeed. All Linux distributions with a graphical desktop provide one or more terminal emulators for entering command line instructions. For example, here in Ubuntu, we can access the terminal by opening Show Applications and clicking the terminal icon. Meanwhile, in Raspbian on a Raspberry Pi, we can access the terminal using the icon on the panel at the top of the screen just there, or if we wish to, we could go to the menu and go to Accessories and select Terminal. Similarly, in Linux Mint, we've again got a panel icon here by default at the bottom of the screen, or we can go to the menu and select, in this case, Administration, and then scroll down and select Terminal. Also, on any of these systems, if we wanted to, we can use the keyboard to open the terminal by holding down the keys Ctrl, Alt and T. It's also worth noting you can change the look of the terminal if you wish to. So for example, here I've gone to Edit and Preferences and selected a very large font so we can see things clearly in this video. At the top left of a newly opened terminal window, we see its command prompt. This indicates the name of the current user and the machine name of the computer they're using, separated by an @ symbol. These are then followed by a colon, the current working directory, and a $sign to indicate where the command prompt ends. If you're wondering what directory we're actually in here, note that the tilde symbol is used to indicate a user's home directory. And to prove this, we can enter the command pwd or print working directory, and if I press enter on that, you will see that we're in the subdirectory cjb, which is contained in the directory home. Note that the / symbol is used to indicate the root or first directory and also as a separator between directories. Note also that the term directory refers to a file container when working in the file system in a terminal, but that such containers are normally referred to as folders when they're represented on a graphical interface such as a Linux desktop. Many of the most common terminal commands are used to show the files contained within a directory and to navigate around. So for example, to see the contents of the current directory, we can use the list command or ls, so I could type ls and enter, and we would see what's in the current directory. And if we want to know a bit more information about these entries, we could use ls and the argument -l and enter on that, and we can see here file permissions and the dates, file sizes, etc. And you probably notice different colours here. White means it's a file, and blue here means it's a directory. And if we want to change to one of these directories, we can use the change directory command or cd. So for example, I could enter cd and pictures like that and enter, and we're now in the pictures directory. And if I now do a list, you'll see what's in the pictures directory. And here the files are in pink because by default Linux makes image files appear in pink. If we want to move up a directory, we can go cd and space and a couple of dots, and that will take us back to where we were. We can list again, there we are back in the home directory. And if we want to go back to the previous directory at any point, we can use cd and a space and a -sign, and that'll take us back, in this case obviously, to pictures. It's also worth noting if you want to get back to the home directory at any point, you can use cd and the shortcut for the home directory, which is the tilde symbol, you might remember, so I'll put a space and a tilde there, and that'll take us back to the home directory, which is of course clearly where we were. Now, sometimes it's useful to change directories by entering a complete path. So before I did cd and pictures like that and got into pictures, but say I now wanted to get into documents. I couldn't just here enter cd document. Well, I can enter it, but it will I spell it right, it won't work because it says no such file or directory. And the reason for that is we're already in pictures, and therefore document is not a subdirectory of that directory. We can't just type cd document. but I could go there to document if I entered the whole path. So I could do cd and slash and home slash as CJB as my user, and then documents like that, and we would end up in documents, and there we are in documents. Or I could have made life there a little bit easier by using the tilde symbol to represent the home directory. So say for example here I wanted to get into say the videos directory, I could do cd and then the space and the tilde and the slash and videos, which would take me directly to the videos directory. Oh, and unrelated to all of this, but very useful, there's a command in the terminal called clear, which I use quite a lot, just to, as you might guess, clear the screen. Clear just keeps things nice and tidy. One of the things that most surprises many Windows users when they migrate to Linux is the lack of drive letters and how you therefore switch between drives. So, for example, if we go back to Windows for a second, we could switch between the C drive and the D drive in Windows just by entering D:, and there we are accessing the D drive. But we can't do this in Linux because in Linux all drives are mapped as part of the same single directory tree. So how do we switch between drives? Well, the first thing to do is to find out where our drives are actually mapped. And to do that, we can use a command called list block devices, or lsblk, enter that, and that'll show us all the so-termed mount points for all the different drives on the system. Now here on this computer, we've only got one permanent drive, which is our SSD there, SDA. It's got two partitions, SDA 1 and 2. Only SDA 1 is mounted, that's the main partition we're working from, and it's got a mount point indicated as the /, which just means it's the root directory. We could change that, of course, doing a cd and root directory, and it would take us to that. And there we are, all the things sitting in the root directory. And again, we've got lots of different colors. You might notice here particularly, we've got highlighting green on this particular folder here, TMP. If you see a folder highlighted in green, it just means it's accessible by other users. Anyway, returning to our issue about drives, I'll now plug a USB drive into this computer. And there we are, it's popped up. We'll ignore what's going on with the graphical desktop, although we can see the drives appeared down there. And if we now do a list, in fact, let's clear things off first, keep things nice and tidy. Let's do an lsblk again. And this time we can see that we've got a SDB, which is our USB drive. And we can see the mount point, which is media CJB tran April 19, which of course is a name we can see on the drive down there. And so we could change that by simply entering that in the command line, cd media and CJB and tran, I think it's a transcend drive, underscore April 19. And there we are, and we could list to see the contents of that drive. Something you may now be thinking is that working in the terminal could require a great deal of very accurate typing, and it's therefore worth being aware of some shortcuts to actually help us with that issue. The first is the use of the arrow keys, which can cycle between previously entered entries. So if I press the up arrow here, we'll start to see things I've typed in previously. We could go back and forth. And so, for example, I can go back to the root directory by just pressing enter on that. I didn't have to type that in. And there we are back in the root directory. The other thing it's worth being aware of is you can use the tab key to auto-complete what you're typing. So say I type in a cd and ME there, I might be, say, going to the media directory. When I press the tab key, it'll work out it must be media, there's no other options, it could be there. Press enter, it'll take us to the media directory. And to take us to something a bit more complicated, we typed in a lot of details before where I did the, let's just bring up that to see that the mount points there. We actually entered all of this to get to that drive before, the media, CGB, tran, etc. Here I could type, for example, cd and med, maybe to start it off, tab or complete media. It doesn't know where I might want to go to because it could be other things in that folder. Next tab will give us that guess. Next tab will give us a whole lot and enter. So it's well worth being aware of these shortcuts, using the up and down arrows to move between previous entries and using the tab key to complete entries. Now, let's look at some commands for creating and manipulating files. First, to create a new directory, we can use the make directory or mkdir command. So for example, here in pictures, we could create a new directory called Wales by entering mkdir and Wales like that and enter. And if we do a list, you'll see we've now got a directory there called Wales. And if we want to remove a directory, we can do so using the remove directory or rmdir command. So rmdir and Wales would now have disappeared. Next, let's look at how we would copy files. And first of all, I'm going to change back to the last directory we were in, which is this one. That's our USB drive, as you may recall. And if we wanted to copy a single file from here to somewhere else, we can use the copy or a cp command, followed by the file name and the destination. So for example, I could do a cp for copy, and we could go wide.png, which is down there, and we could send it to, for example, the home directory and pictures, which of course is where we just were, like that. And if we therefore go back to that directory like that, and we do a list, you will see that hopefully wide has now appeared. There it is, look, in this directory. And for the rest of this example, I think I'm also now going to make the directory Wales and leave it there, sitting there, so we've got that available as well. And the reason I put that there is I want to show you copying lots of files at the same time. So let's go back to our USB drive, going back to that directory and list again so we can remember what is going on. And we can copy lots of files using what are called wildcards. So we could, for example, here put in cp for copy and star.star, and then we'll just type it in and explain it. We'll put in back again to the home directory and pictures, I can spell it, and also Wales. And what that's going to do is to copy all files with all file extensions to pictures Wales. That's what the wildcard is doing. So if we enter on that, there we are. It seems to have got on with doing that. And if we go back to previous directory again, list it there. We want to go into Wales, and now hopefully there's files in Wales. There are. Everything is copied across just as we asked it to. But of course, we might not want all of these files. We might want to remove files, to delete files. And we can do that using the remove or rm command. So for example, we could type rm and wide.png to get rid of that particular file down there at the bottom. You can see it down there, and enter on that and list, and it has gone. Or we could again use wildcards. So for example, I could get rid of all the PNG files here by entering rm and star.png to remove all the PNG files. Do that and list, and you see we've just got the two files left that aren't PNG files there. And we could remove those as well by doing an rm star.star, which remove everything. So obviously use that command with care. And if we do that, then we've now nothing left in our Wales directory at all. Another useful command is move or mv. So say for example we went back a level there. We're back in pictures, and you'll see in here is a directory called tests. And if we look in the tests, just to show you what's in there, I think there's quite a few files. Yes, there's loads of things in test. Look, come back, and there we are. So we could move tests somewhere else using the mv command. So for example, we could enter mv and tests, and let's put it into the home directory, say documents. There we are, like that. And now if we just list, tests has disappeared. But if we change to documents like that and listed, hopefully it is there. And yes, test is sitting over here. And if we went into cd tests like that and listed, all the files will come across as well. Now, of course, you might want to make a copy of a folder and its contents rather than simply moving it. And here, if we just entered the copy command, if we just put a cp and tests, and we wanted to put it, say, into making a copy back in pictures, which would be the home directory and pictures, if we just did that, it wouldn't know to copy everything inside the directory. So to make this work, we go back here and we put in the argument for recursive, a -r there, and if we do that, cp for copy, -r for recursive tests, and then put it into pictures. Hopefully if we do that, took a little second there, you saw it do it, and if we go back to pictures. I'm not using the shortcuts, am I? Shame on me. And there we are, you'll see a test is back. And if we cd tests and list, you'll see everything is sitting in it as we'd hope it would be. Finally, another thing I want to show you in terms of manipulating files, something rather useful, let's clear the screen again, keep ourselves tidy, is that we've got the command unzip, which hardly surprisingly unzips files. So say for example we go to the downloads directory here. I think there's something sitting in downloads which we could download, if I can spell it. But if we have a look in there, you'll see yes, there is a zip file sitting there in red, nice and prominent for us there, and we could unzip that by just typing unzip, and we'll start it off, and then of course we can use the tab key to give us the whole file name, enter on that, and it will unzip the files. And if we just list again, you'll see we've now got that layer effects there where it's unzipped the files too. If we cd layer effects again, I remember to use the shortcuts, and there we are, and the files are sitting in there, they've been unzipped. Right, let's move on to installing or removing applications using the Advanced Packaging Tool, or APT command. This is a modern substitute for a command called apt-get, which you may have seen me use in my older videos. The basic practical differences between apt and apt-get are for many users not that substantial, and both will work, but as apt is more modern, I'll use it here. apt installs applications from online repositories, and so before installing anything, it's wise to execute an apt update to make sure your computer knows the latest repository locations. To do this, I need to enter sudo apt and update like that, with sudo standing for either superuserdo or substitute userdo. Either way, it tells the terminal to execute the apt's command with administrator privileges, which are required for apt operations as they make changes to the system. And so, if I now press enter, our update will proceed. Right, we're now set to install an application. So, for example, I could enter sudo and apt install, and what should we pick? GL Mark II, which is a graphics benchmark. So if I press enter on that, it'll start installing the application. We'll speed on through to the end. And once it's complete, here we are, we can execute it by typing GL Mark II, which should bring up a spinning horse. There we are, a spinning horse, because basically this tests things out by spinning around a horse, and a bit later it'll spin around a box. Let's fast forward a bit. There's the box, and we wait a bit longer, it'll spin around a nice crystal rabbit. And there we are, we've finally got to the rabbit, and if we let the thing complete, we'll end up with a final benchmark for our system. And there it is, our GL Mark II score is 5106. This has of course got nothing whatsoever to do with using the terminal, I just had to install something to show you it could be done. And it's also worth noting that we can remove applications using the apt command as well. So if I now entered sudo apt remove and GL Mark II, it would remove the application like this. Hopefully, do we want to do it? Yes, we do. And it's completed. And therefore, if we now entered GL Mark II, let's find it in the buffer, there it is, we would of course get an error because the application is no longer installed. Right, just before we finish, 3 final things. Firstly, I thought I'd show you how you can paste into the terminal. So you might, for example, find code online you want to put into the terminal. You might have someone say send you a document. That's less likely, I guess. But here's a document with some sample code in, the code we just used to install GL Mark II. I could highlight that and do a copy. And if we then went to the terminal, although the terminal is text-based, you can use the mouse here. If we go up there and we do a right click and we can find there's a paste option there, we can paste that text in. So if you find information online you want to paste into a terminal, that's how you can do it, and we could clearly execute that command. I won't execute it again. The second thing I wanted to point out is there's a great help system for commands in the terminal. So if you want help on a particular command, just type the command, for example, CP for copy, and do a space, couple of minus signs, and type help. And this, for example, will give us lots of help on the copy command. I've made my font slightly smaller to see all of it on screen, but there you are, you get all the help on how to use the copy command. Or for example, if you wanted help on the apt command, we could do apt and help like that, and again we get lots of useful help. And just because I like doing so, I'm going to clear the screen. And finally, the last command I will give you is exit. You might have guessed about exit, but if you want to come out of a terminal and you don't want to use the mouse to do it, maybe you've got used to using the keyboard, you can just type it EXIT for exit and enter. It'll close the terminal, which seems a great way to bring this tutorial to an end. These days, it's possible to use a modern desktop Linux operating system and never go near the terminal, never even launch the terminal. This said, I always think it's a good idea to have some notion of what is going on under the hood, as it were, with your computer, and there are occasions when you're using Linux, it can be useful to be able to do a bit of basic work in the terminal. And in that context, I hope you found this video useful. But now that's it for another video. If you enjoy what you've seen here, please press that like button. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.